Hello and welcome to the LCS Countdown, where for 30 minutes we stack rank the mid laners in the league, and Kobe gives us a Minion Vision breakdown before the top of the hour, and we jump into Game 1. I'm Dash, joined by Crumbs, Prowley, and Mark, as always. And going into today's games, we have a tie for first, as Team Liquid has quietly pulled into the top of the standings, alongside Cloud9. Been a while since we've seen anyone sit next to them in those standings. We'll see if they can jump ahead, though, as teams like CLG and Dignitas either slip or climb. Speaking of climbing, we're taking a look at a rising FlyQuest, whose strong win against TSM was made even sweeter by the triumphant return of Wild Turtle.
I'm so excited that Turtle's back. I mean, he is such an aggressive player that it doesn't feel quite right whenever he's not in there. They had a great start to the game, and I'm sure some of us might have a strong opinion on TSM. But for Turtle himself, he looked fantastic. This play in the mid lane was such an aggressive play and exactly the kind of stuff I've been missing from the AD carry position out of FlyQuest. Being able to flash under that turret, get those last two auto attacks off, and then they still don't back off and they turn it on to the Olaf again. This is all great stuff, and I'm excited to see it, and it was surprising to take so long to get Turtle back in. MASH had played 5 weeks and had basically been the lowest AD carry in stats across the board, was making mistakes in the mid to late game. It was definitely surprising, and it feels like FlyQuest always wants like this overabundance of information to reach the conclusion. Everyone else reaches very quickly, like Solo or Viper. Everyone after a couple games was like Solo, and it took them forever to get to Viper, and it's the same thing it felt like here.
Yeah, they're definitely pretty slow on these roster changes. They were a little fast, I think, on the Turtle takeout. I know he mentioned in the interview that he was struggling, but in all honesty, FlyQuest in Spring was a roster we did not want to see change that much. And the fact that they made these changes and then, yeah, like Mark said, took 5 weeks to come back and put Wild Turtle in was definitely a weird one because, yeah, there was just a lot of questions on why he was actually taken out. Is MASH actually performing better? It's hard to see it from this side.
Now, I don't want to be a party pooper to you guys' FlyQuest celebration, but I kind of do, because TSM turbo into that game. It was something that we had not seen really go that fast into the enemy's hands, especially. I mean, I'm not going to go into names at this point. You already know what happened. But, yeah, I need to see FlyQuest do a little bit better against a team that isn't just handing kills like it's Christmas treats.
Well, now it may have taken them longer than we would have liked, Mark, but they at least have made the change, and Wild Turtle is back in. On the other hand, we have to talk about the fact that somehow Cloud9 has lost again. I thought one and done. They were going to turn it back on like Spring. We were going to see another 17-1, and yet they fall to Evil Geniuses.
And they lost to EG in a really surprising fashion, because EG basically didn't show up on Friday, and then today or yesterday, Golden Glue actually had a really solid performance alongside Zeyzal, which was what we heard from Artemis as to why they wanted to put these new players in so that Zeyzal could have a better time doing his thing. Really showed off there and kind of made it seem like C9 had a rough time, but this is what happens when you have a team that is so consistently at the top. They have to stay innovating, so a lot of the earlier losses or earlier struggling games were from the innovation, particularly in the bottom lane. I think you can say that not the sky is falling, but some pieces are definitely coming down from Cloud9. And
it's precipitating.
Yeah, it's raining. Good one. It's raining from Cloud9.
I would say it's sprinkling. I'm not going to say raining yet because they did have some experimental drafts. This was not the case against Evil Geniuses. It was a very standard play. But I think in Spring when they came out just swinging, no one was even close to like thinking about how to play this way. But I think every team has watched Cloud9 throughout Spring, all of their matches, and learned a lot from them. And in Summer, I think these teams are starting to take it to them. I don't think Cloud9's falling down at all. I just think the other teams are getting a bit better.
And I think one thing I want to look at talking about standard gameplay is C9 and especially Nisqy, his champion pool and the wins and losses. They've been talking about this Doinb style, and Doinb has a very interesting champion pool. And in the 2 games that they lost, Nisqy has been back on more standard mages. It was a Cassiopeia game and a Syndra game compared to the Karmas, the Gallios, the LeBlancs, the Zoes, the more mobile champions. Even Azir has mobility, can do some self-playmaking, unlike these 2 champs. It feels like if Nisqy is on a standard control mage that doesn't have its own go button, the team struggles a lot more.
Yeah, so how does this interact with the idea that Cloud9, given, well, at least prior to yesterday, given their lead above the rest of the teams, might just be them experimenting and looking for different avenues. Again, back to that point of, is the sky really falling? Are you worried that Nisqy is, like the meta's moving away from him and he's going to struggle at this point going forward, or does he still have options?
He's got options. The meta's not changing that much. I think they're just picking different champions because they want to try things, sort of like what we saw with EG before they made the swap, just trying to put Jizuki on different picks.
All right. Well, now, though the jury is still out on Niski, we're heading back to court for our latest installment of Draft Defense. The way the draft defense works, in a tribunal justice system, draft-based offenses are considered especially heinous. And in the LCS, the dedicated analysts who investigate these drafts are members of an elite squad known as the State Farm Analyst Desk. These are their stories. I am Judge Dash.
All rise for the Honorable Judge Dash.
Thank you very much, Prowler.
Analysts.
You want me to rise?
Right. Up.
See my sweats? No.
Yeah, let's see those sweats, baby. But today we have for review the case of Dignitas versus CLG. First, let's take a look at the draft in question.
Mark, as the representative for the defense, how do you plea?
Well, it is my responsibility to represent my client in the best light that I can, and they are pleading not guilty.
Okay.
Crumbs, as the prosecution, you may now lay out your case.
As a prosecutor, I am pleading Mark guilty in the first place. And guilty
You don't get to
what?
plead for him.
Guilty of what? Of
You prosecute the case for why he's guilty.
He's inting away the second phase of bans, in particular the Kennen ban. Now, think of the evidence that is at hand. Riven was buffed on patch 10.14. This is the first patch that Riven is in. Dignitas' only wins came from Lorlo. Viper had never won with the LCS roster this split. Now, he comes in after playing in Academy, not having very good games, has red side, and if you actually were to have seen his gameplay on Thursday, which he played in Academy, he was running it down on Kennen sometimes. Not every time, but sometimes. Doesn't he run it down? When he's playing Riven. See, this is how he was playing. This is probably the only clip your client, Mark, had seen from the Kennen game. Finds a flank onto the Caitlyn. Fantastic. But this isn't just the only fight that happened in the game. Why don't we take a look about the other plays that happened towards the Kennen? Because the Kennen spent a lot of the time in the gray screen, and this was what the client, CLG, chose to target ban away, knowing that this was the best champion. I mean, look at this. This is not working. This is not worthy of a ban in any stretch of the imagination. It would have only taken a simple Riven ban, a throwaway. Dignitas had already picked their mid laner as well. They were saving topside counter pick for the last pick on red side and still went with that one. It's just a complete mess from the start. You have to send these guys away, Judge Dash. Thank you.
A strong case from the prosecution. The defense, your rebuttal.
My client is in the position that they had done everything necessary to avoid the Riven pick. They thought that they had plenty of mobility built into their carries. With the Ezreal champion, they had good lockdown frontline CC with the Nautilus and the Ornn. And on top of that, the last time that he had played the Riven was all the way back in January 25th. The first game that he played this year. That was months ago. The statute of limitations is out on banning the Riven. We have not seen it in forever. And it had gone unbanned many times, and he had not picked it. And so my client was just doing the same exact thing that every single other team had done against him in the past couple of months.
All right, well, there's the case.
You failed to realize it was buffed. This was buffed. Riven was made stronger.
The counter-argument in the closing statement from the prosecution. We have to check in, of course, as this is the court of law, with our jury. Our jury today is represented by the casters. So over to Captain Flowers for the verdict.
Do they take bribes?
I think it might be a little late for that, my friend.
All right. I'm not even going into the back room to do deliberations. Don't worry about providing us with a free lunch for the day. We don't even need water. I'm just going to stand in this room and say it right now. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Bang the hammer. Send him away. That draft was bad. You got to ban the Riven against the Riven player. Lock him up.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that Crumbs is clearly not a true lawyer, hasn't even watched an episode of Law and Order.
Even he can win this case.
Yeah, even he can win this case. As soon as I saw the records on the screen, that's all she wrote. 6-3 on Riven, 22 and 60-something on not Riven. That's all you need to know. Ban the Riven. You're guilty.
I see one of my teammates with that win rate in solo queue. I am dodging, but there's no way for them to dodge the law and order for the punishment for this crime. Send them away, Dash.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Guilty
Jury.
they are. It was a valiant defense there, Mark. It feels like almost you were a public defender there, given a case.
Yeah, I didn't want that case. It got put on my desk. I was like, someone's got to defend him. I guess I'll do it.
Right, yeah.
You're the free lawyer.
Yeah. I'm the overworked free guy who's like, what can can we just make a plea deal? I don't want to do this.
All right, well, hopefully they show up their draft this week so that Mark does not have to defend them again. We are stepping away as we go. We're headed back into the jungle with Kobe to learn about about minion vision.
Hey there, Kobe here with another edition of Into the Jungle. In this episode, I want to show you the value of knowing minion vision ranges and showing a little patience to make your ganks a little bit more unexpected. Everyone is used to the normal gank pass, river, tri-brush, or even over the big wall behind the enemy turret with champions like Rek'Sai. So used to it most of the time that they're warded. But don't fret, even if they are, it can give the enemy a false sense of confidence, which you can punish. You can bypass most common wards in the river or tri-brush by doing something called lane ganking. Just walking into the lane brush and either having your teammate bait a fight, or even better, predicting an enemy gank. Patience and information gathering are extremely valuable here because an enemy will often expend resources and mobility spells to try and close the distance when forcing a gank, leaving them prone to your counter gank. Now, playing around wards is one thing, but another important resource of vision is the minion wave itself, and that is one that you can exploit. An important thing to remember about Summoner's Rift is that minion waves spawn from both Nexus at the exact same time, resulting in mirrored movement. This means mirrored vision as well. So when your wave is at your turret, it is also at your opponent's turret. Even if you cannot see your opponent's minions, you can look at your minions to know when they're passing by, say, the opening by Krugs. Don't pass by this opening when you see your minions about to pass by the opening by your Gromp. Using the brush in lane is great for showing what knowledge of minion vision lets you do. Your general rule of thumb is that a minion wave cannot see further than one brush length plus the empty space to the next brush. So, until a minion has passed the close edge of the first brush, you are free to slip into the middle brush for a better spot to pull your counter gank off. A more nuanced gank position is the one in mid. Now, you'll generally want to be further behind the enemy mid laner than just coming from the river. You can still stay in the fog of war by drawing an imaginary line basically through the middle of this river brush to keep out of vision of the minions that stream down mid lane. Here's a minion wave, and here is what their little minion eyes can see. So positioning in this spot still keeps you in the fog of war and are ready to pounce on an unsuspecting mid laner. Or, better yet, set up another counter gank. Successful counter ganks like these can be almost game-winning plays, giving you a huge jungle advantage, as well as allowing your top lane to establish a freeze and deny farm, or even allow you to retreat into the fog of war to exploit a greedy TP for a repeat kill guaranteed to tilt them off the face of the rift. You can also simply push to bounce the wave back or walk away with your summoner spell advantage, all of which can set you up for a possible Rift Herald. Those are just 3 setups for counter ganking that really emphasize how you should always be cognizant of what your opponents can see and how you can manipulate that information that they are getting from minions, wards, or champions. If you found this helpful, let me know on Twitter or Instagram at esportskobe, and as always, you can send in your questions or requests for future episodes.
And now, it's time for sage advice from a literal world champion.
Remember to always believe in yourself. Unless you really suck. Then maybe find a good duo partner to believe in.
This has been sage advice from a literal world champion.
Welcome back to the LCS Countdown, where we've got 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid going down in not too long. But before we jump into that, the analysts have brought their mid lane tier lists, where we see a new top 3 from what we had in spring last split. And that's where I want to start. I want to start a little more general, then we'll dive into some specifics. A reminder that in spring, our top 3 mid laners were Niski, Power of Evil, and Jizuke on the all-pro teams. And here, it's only Niski who remains in the top 3 for any of you.
Yeah, it was really crazy that we had such turnaround or changes, I guess, from spring to summer. I feel like I can't remember another year, but we had the 2 of the top 3 drop out completely, some of them all the way into the bottom half. I mean, Jizuke is 7th, the highest for any of us, and that's crazy, which is why I think Niski deserves a lot of credit for staying in the top part.
Yeah, I mean, Niski staying wasn't too big of a surprise for me. It wasn't very hard to put him there. I know in spring it was easy, in summer it was just as easy. I mean, he just makes Blabber look so great, and his just team in general is much stronger because of how he plays. I mean, weirdly enough, he has 9 champions out of 11 games. 2 of them have been on TF, and the other 2 were on Galio. I don't know how he got these 2 champions because his style is roam first, ask questions later, and he puts out major map pressure on the game. So regardless of whatever stats you want to compare, like, ooh, look at Jensen's Azir games, the way Niski plays is just unmatched right now.
I mean, it definitely deserves a lot of credit. The whole team is stepping up, but the proactivity for him in the early game is just through the roof. He's all over the map. The only thing you can knock him for really is his CSD, but it's one of those things where, like, if you watch the game, you understand why it's lower than his opponents.
Well, while Niski...
You give it to Blabber.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, and while Niski still holds the top spot on our list here, let's talk about one of the guys who moved into the top 3. No stranger to this position necessarily over his career, but Jensen in number 2.
Yeah, all of us across the board for Jensen. He has been really impressive this split as kind of the main focal point for Team Liquid. He doesn't get a ton of help. His jungle proximity difference is actually very low. He gets a lot of attention from the enemy team. He doesn't require much himself. He's playing late game scaling control mages and still getting a monstrous CS lead. And he's being a lot of times the initiator for his own team.
That's what I like about Jensen, that he's not getting a lot of help, save for a few roams here and there from his support, not necessarily the jungler, and he is able to crush the opponents that he has to crush that are definitely below him when it comes to either the team standings or just him as a player. So that kind of consistency goes a long way for just planning your compositions out, whether you're Team Liquid or even if you're prepared to go against him. You're like, okay, if my mid laner is not as strong as Jensen, I need to put him on a pick that can definitely still be useful despite falling behind in the laning phase.
Yeah, I mean, I got to eat crow here. I thought Jensen was going to be bad this split. Spring, I was really upset with him. And summer, when he was talking trash in the first week, I was like, this guy can't talk. He needs to play well. But so far, he has been playing amazing. He's this mid laner right now that once you get into the late game, he's going to be the focus of team fights because you can't ignore him because he'll just wipe you.
Yeah, without a doubt. Jensen impressing us, again, finding his way back into the top 3. Bjergsen will round that out on each of your lists, but I actually want to jump down now to Demonte, a player who's had his ups and downs throughout his career. At times, we've been saying this is the next one. This is going to be the next pop-off mid laner, and at the moment, you're all kind of middling on him to lesser over there on Mark's list. But let's start with the 6th place callouts. Crumbs, why?
So Demonte feels like he has 2 modes, whether he's having a fantastic game or one that really leaves a lot to be desired. And when he's having some of those greater games, a lot of it comes down to the synergy that he has with his jungler. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly where Demonte lies because the recent memory that we have of him was playing with Lyra, and then now here we have him with Closer, and Closer is definitely an incredible jungler, and if they're both playing really well, he looks amazing, and if they're not, it looks really bad. So we need to see a middle ground, and that's why we have him there. We haven't seen him rise up.
I mean, my only knock on him is that I've been less impressed with him this split than I was during that time on Clutch. You know, when he was spamming the Kiana and things like that, I think he's had some misses. And like you're saying, he does work well with his jungler, but he's also not the kind of player that when he's on, he's solo winning you the game. When he's on, it means he's working well with his team. Whereas Jizuke, who I have higher than him, who I also consider being kind of coin flippy, at least when Jizuke's on, he solo wins the game for his team.
I want to add something to my list too, which is that Insanity and Phoenix were in last place, but that's not because I had them dead last. I don't have enough games to go where to put them. So
same with Golden Glue.
The sample size, you're right. The sample size is just too low. Like Ryoma and Jizuke, yeah, we know enough, but those 2 still need more.
Super fair, but that actually keys me into something because, Mark, you had Insanity up in 6th place where Demonte was for the other guys. So why is it that you have some confidence in him as a player?
I mean, he makes those kind of big game-losing mistakes, it feels like a lot of time, but in the other moments, he's such a good player in terms of making the smaller good plays. Like, he's never getting caught out of position. He's never killing himself to a gank he shouldn't die to. He's never flubbing something in the early mid-game that gives the enemy team a monstrous lead, whereas I've seen, you know, blue card Demonte in some of these kinds of plays.
Gotcha. So he's got a more of a lock on some of the fundamentals, but lets some things slip down the line. We'll see some of those mid laners face off in our games today. First up, Jensen loads onto the Rift for Team Liquid as he faces Ryoma and 100 Thieves. Then Power of Evil and Niski challenge one another in Game 2. Should make that conversation for mid-tier list more interesting. With 2 more matches before we jump into the Bud Light League Lounge, where I've got Crumbs, the Tigress, and Raz joining me on twitch.tv/BudLight to wrap up the weekend.
like Raz's picture there. He looks like he's very flexible.
Raz,
Yeah.
it's impossible to have a bad time if Raz is around, and so therefore I am quite excited for him to be joining us later in the evening. You don't agree? You don't agree?
I
that he's a
always
fun guy.
I had
Whatever.
Friday.
I'm just gonna tell Raz that when he gets on the show later.
I
I'll be
had
like,
him on
look,
Friday Night League.
I
He
was super
making fun of me.
excited to have you on.
He's making fun of me in Prawley. He called us Prawley wrong and off the mark. You know, I'm
those
not
are
having
great.
fun with him.
Yeah, it works. Those work for me, man. Looking at game one, we've got Team Liquid aiming to take first place, which is a familiar feeling for most players on that roster, except someone we learned about earlier this week, their young gun bot laner, Tactical.
During the spring split, when I was playing my few games, it felt pretty surreal what was happening. Like I couldn't completely process that I was playing LCS with some players I would never have imagined to play with beforehand.
Tactical is in for Team Liquid. We'll see if he can fill the biggest shoes that an AD carry could have in North America, which is Doublelift himself. I mean, literally any player coming to the LCS, you'd be like, that's a downgrade from Doublelift.
Tactical got to be the starting AD carry of the 4-time defending champions. It was a lot of pressure and some really big shoes to fill.
The re-engage could be too good. TL gonna chase down the kills. A double kill for Tactical. Give him the third. Oh, they both dash over the wall. Beautifully done by Tactical.
Coming into the Summer Split of 2020, he gets the full-time spot.
I sort of couldn't believe it at first, because there's no way I would have ever thought 1 year ago from now that I would have replaced Doublelift basically. So it just took some time to sink in, and I was really happy, but also I was also nervous at the same time because I was thinking about would I mesh well once we're in during season, would I be able to stand my own against the other top players in LCS, and was I good enough? But if a world champion is willing to play with me, I think there might be something going on.
I still remember that when he was in the academy team, I was keep asking him, do you want to duo with me? He said, playing with you is like pressure me. I'm scared to make a mistake when I play with you. And at that, he's very shy, and then he's not a really aggressive personality. But when I talk to him more and more, I realize he has a big anger to be better. You don't want to lose to anybody.
He's someone who is clearly a perfectionist. He can win a laning phase by 20 CS and still sometimes be beating himself up because he didn't win it by 30 CS.
I'd say I bring a chance to the team to be able to change. For example, if they had maybe kept Doublelift, it would have been harder for them to change the way they wanted to play, just because veterans usually have a solid ground of how they want to play the game and how they view the game. But I don't really have the solid ground yet. So I'm pretty open. I bring some new excitement to the team, I think, Zoomer energy.
I've seen a lot of other rookies come into teams of veterans, of people with strong minds, and they're just like little puppy dogs, trying to follow people around. And they're not really able to build off of the things that got them to the pro stage in the first place. But Tactical is not like that, right? Tactical is able to be tactical.
As a player, he's like a diamond from the mine. In NA mine, I can see he's gonna be shine in the future.
This is a very scary prospect for Team Liquid to sub out Doublelift. It is very obviously a downgrade. Nice start. Oh my God, Stunt's gonna go down. There's no way he lives there. Wind is safe, but here comes Tactical. And Tactical wins the duel.
If you took away his name and you put in Doublelift there, you'd be like, oh yeah, just give him Player of the Week. That was great.
What a quick start. Don't stop. And already Tactical is here to kill his own teammate. Start talking. feel like we already are moving past him living in double lift shadow.
Tactical, so far, 2 thumbs up.
Give it what you got right now.
But that is Cody's son dying out of the turret. Look at this damage. Tactical hasn't been available. 2 more Qs would kill him, but he's changed in place. Tactical, taking names.
Whether it be in League of Legends or in other sports, it's oftentimes really important to make that strong first impression. Sometimes you don't have full control over when it's going to be or in what situation it's going to happen, but you need to be ready for that situation. So he was someone who was able to be ready for the moment and step up to the moment. And my hope is that he can continue to do that throughout the rest of his career.
Money.